podcast from Joanna Mike I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Two and a mic. Two and a mic. Tatiana works for The Economist and is involved in some extremely important work promoting the blue economy and, through the principles inherent in the way The Economist works, ensuring that diverse voices are introduced in every panel and event. She also works in voluntary organizations and does so as tirelessly as though they were her main vocations. This says more for Tatiana's character than any words I might use to introduce her with. Tatiana was one of my first guests, and though work doesn't allow her to participate so often, her words are always measured, her thoughts quick and witty, and her analysis direct and to the point. I really appreciate her disagreement because her opinions are informed and her conclusions always worth considering. Thank you, Tatiana, for your time. Tatiana, it's great to have you back. How are you?
Hi, Zach. It's great to be back. Thank you for inviting me. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Busy as always. Not quite as busy as you, though, because you've also been on another podcast. How did that come about?
Yes, I was. In fact, it was through a fellow alumna that I met. When was it? Last year or the year before? There was a networking event, and Miles and I just got to talking. We share a lot of similar interests, and he's a storyteller, he's a content creator, and he just started a new series for Free Range, and he invited me to participate and cover off storytelling, storytelling for media organizations, and sort of focusing on topics that are linked to the SDGs. So yeah, it was really fun to be part of that.
Yeah, I listened to it actually. I was very entertained. I did like the approach, which, as you say, it's very much sort of storytelling based. Yeah, he had some funky questions for you. So yeah, did they throw you a bit, the questions, because you had to think about some of your favorite stories from the olden times? I mean.
No, I didn't. No, it wasn't. You know me, I love talking, but no, but it was nice because it was a nice little trip down. It was a nice little trip, but no, they were great questions, and Miles is very good actually. I was saying to him, I think he's got like a natural podcaster, interviewer voice type thing. There's such a thing.
Yeah, well, apparently there is. I'm not familiar with it, but yeah, cool. It was good to hear you speaking with somebody else in a recorded fashion.
Well, you know, I also interviewed. I interviewed for once. I wasn't doing it. I actually interviewed an LA Armenian producer about his very cool album, which I discovered last year. We talked a little bit about it. It's a compilation album of old classic funk disco type Armenian music from the 70s, which I'd never heard of until I came across this album. So yeah, it was. I'll send the link actually. Maybe I didn't share it with you.
No, I think you sent me a link, but I thought it was just to an article. I didn't realize it was a link. There was also a link to your interview with him. That would be cool.
Yeah. So for once, I wasn't doing talking, and I was listening and learning from somebody new.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that I'll have to listen to.
Yeah, and I enjoyed your bedtime stories on Simone de Beauvoir. So well done you on bringing back to life some very important figures of history.
Yeah, I mean that's a great concept. This bedtime with Wikipedia from Schönlein Media. So I mean they're really successful in Germany. I think they're like that podcast that they have is Einschlafen mit Wikipedia for those who want to hear something in German. I think it's something like in the top 10 of German podcasts. So they're doing really well. and they want to, they're trying to create something similar in the English-speaking market, and that's bedtime with Wikipedia. And it's actually quite fun to do these topics, because a lot of them I'm really interested in. So it's strange though, because it's only reading and there's no actual interaction, so it's a bit different to what I normally do. So but there you go.
No, it's great. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that, actually.
Good. But you are so busy. It's almost impossible to get you on these things. I have to book you through an agent months in advance. But you've been doing what you do with your environmental work, water projects, conferences. I mean, you get some really influential people together, don't you?
Yeah, it's so we had the summit in March. I think we spoke after that, and that was a huge success. We're now full swing into planning for World Ocean Day, which is coming up on June the 8th. We're going to be hosting a webinar, and we're going to be focusing on the Changemaker Challenge, which is that we're running, that we announced the 2022 submissions for at the World Ocean Summit. There'll be a focus on it on World Ocean Day, and then planning underway for the World Ocean Tech and Innovation Summit, which will be taking place in Canada in October, and then the Asia Pacific Summit coming up in Singapore in late November, and then of course the global event in February, March. And then of course in between all of that, there is of course UN Ocean, which is going to be huge. It was due to take place in before the pandemic. Obviously, it's been delayed now and finally happening end of June this year. So again, I think we're going to see, I was from someone the other day, they said that there's 900 organizations that have applied to attend UN Ocean. And it's really challenging trying to get accreditation at the moment because, everyone and their mother wants to attend.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, can you talk a bit more about this then, the Ocean Initiative and what all of these things are and the summits that you've already done, and just in case people don't have that background?
Yeah, of course. So, the Economist's World Ocean Initiative is a mission-driven project around how to create a sustainable ocean economy. We do this through events that we run annually, and of course through storytelling and sort of research-based projects. So we work with a number of different organizations to help bring to life some of the key challenges affecting the ocean and its health, and looking at how, some of what those solutions are. So anything from shipping and decarbonization to plastics in the circular economy to the impact the impact of tourism, fisheries, food security, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Now, I know because you work in such a professional capacity and with governments and other sort of NGOs, I presume, you have to take a very, how should I say, professional approach. Whereas from the stuff that I've read, and I'm basing a lot of this on information that I've received from either the BBC or the Guardian, which I still consider to be two respectable news publishers. A lot of the stuff that the that the petrochemical industry has said that they're doing, it's not just greenwashing, it's bullshit, basically, isn't it? And I can say this, I know you can't. But
no, I disagree with you as well. I do think there's a lot of efforts that are being made. I think that they're a bit slow. Of course, everything is moving slower than what you anticipate.
Okay, but what about these carbon bombs? Because these guys are basically betting that governments will not pull their fingers out. And so basically they will be able to continue investing in carbon fuels for the next 20 or 30 years, opening up new mines and tapping oil reserves for decades to come. So they don't give a shit. This is what I mean.
No, I think the biggest challenge is government and businesses aligning, on a shared agenda. And I think sometimes governments move slower than businesses need. The other thing is that businesses have to be forward thinking, because if they don't, legislation will be introduced that will not actually help address their concerns. So it's very important for businesses and governments to be aligned, and it's not actually in their interest for them to move slowly, because it impacts their businesses as well. You know, your clients expect you to be operating to a certain level, so you have to be able to address that. The challenge is that every country operates differently, and when you're a multinational and you're dealing with multiple governments and legislation, then it becomes a bit it's not as straightforward as it might appear. And you know, that's me. That's my take on it, at least, anyway.
You're such a diplomat.
Well, I think you have to weigh things up from all angles. I think it's very easy it's easier to criticize than to understand all parties.
I see. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm going to leave this in. Yeah, I'm not going to edit this out, because it's cool to have people who disagree with me. And
Listen, everyone thinks that solutions can be easily found, and that everything is simple, right? At most, we kind of assume that everything can be made black and white. Sometimes it's easy. Solutions can be easily found, right? But the real issue is, are you creating a sustainable solution, or are you just basically putting a band-aid onto something? If you really want to create something long-lasting, then you really need to delve into the challenges and the issues, and that requires asking certain types of questions, having, you know, protracted discussions and research and so on and so forth. And these things they don't happen overnight if you're looking for real solutions, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should just like park their cars wherever they want, M25 or on the side of the street. I mean, let's face it, parking your car on the M25 is quite easy anyway. Walk out, go home, stop flying planes, and let's just reset, see where we are. Yeah, and then basically come up with any kind of solutions which basically allow us to live without using up all of our resources. It's not going to happen. Yeah, but my point is that we as people are relying on others to make decisions for us, be them governments or organizations or companies, multinational and so on. And I understand why you have such a positive take on the responsibility felt by these petrochemical companies. Or, as you know, I disagree. But I think we should do our bit without waiting for governments to make their decisions.
Put it this way, you need full participation from across the entire ecosystem to create positive impact, right? And the onus is on us, and it's on the businesses, and it's on governments, and it's on the broader civil society, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like this age-old thing. Is policy influenced by public action, or is it the other way around, right? What is it that how do you affect change? We live in a world where you do not have political participation at the level that it should be at to ensure that you are truly living in a society that feels democratic. Okay, you just need to look at the way that political elections are going on to kind of get a sense of how engaged people are, and you can blame it on all sorts of different factors. But you've got to figure out how to motivate the disengaged and non-political people, because there are a lot of people out there who are not political, and they're fine about not being political. And that's fine too, by the way, because we all have different interests. And I keep saying this to people who get enraged by the younger generation, who they claim are not so engaged. They're just engaged in different ways.
Yeah, I'm with you on that with regards to the depoliticization of society. I think the problem is that people they say, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered because politicians won't change. So, I mean, if just looking at the UK, you can see the kind of corruption where the government just simply gave lots of these multi-million-pound contracts to friends. You can see the lies from Boris Johnson et al., and they've all been caught out with this Partygate. people look at this and they just say, I can't be bothered. And it's from every side. I mean, Corbyn was, he sort of swept into leading the Labour Party with this, our popularity. I can't remember which, what was that, the concert he attended and everybody was singing his name and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, what did he achieve? He created huge problems for the Labour Party with some of the claims that he was so anti-Jewish, and he still hasn't provided an acceptable apology for some of the things that happened during his time. So as if people look at all of these political parties and think, nah, they don't represent me.
So, well, exactly. And frankly, I mean, I've never been a fan of Corbyn's, and I always knew a lot of what he was talking was fluff. Or actually, okay, let me clarify. I've always had the impression that he's more fluff than he is substance, and he caused a lot of problems to the Labour Party. And I'm not a Labour voter, but I empathise with many of people that I know who have been long-standing Labourites, who at some point didn't feel comfortable within their own party. I mean, there should never be a scenario where you do not feel comfortable within your own political party, especially when you have been a long-standing party member. Leaders are not meant to sort of ostracize people for not following their lead, but also it's the age-old thing, which I believe is be wary of the populist.
Mm. Yeah, but the problem is that there's no party that monopolizes populism because they're all at it. They're all chucking in their populist statements and this and that, and there's no party of substance anymore. And
well, the Liberal Democrats are quite so they've got substance. Their only challenge is that they're not international enough. They're not thinking big picture. They've got they think locally, and it's wonderful that they do that, but it doesn't instill faith in one to think that they could handle not just local issues and regional issues, but national issues and international issues. That's their challenge. They need to figure out how to get that buy-in. That's my that would be my challenge to them.
But they're still ideologically elitist. I mean, this concept of a free market and this will solve everything. It's just not going to do the job because a lot of people, they require regulation. Just simply consider the world to be broken down into a number of little markets which can regulate themselves. Just doesn't work. It hasn't worked, and even under neoliberalism doesn't work.
Well, it has to a certain point. Of course, I disagree with that. I think it has worked to a certain point. Of course, you have to adapt. The world is changing. Of course, we have to adapt. I mean, you do have to change your views slightly and as I say, adapt to the current system or the realities that we're facing. I think the biggest question mark for me is, where are the new ideas, right? Where I keep saying this to certain people and they look at me like I'm saying something crazy, but you need to we need to stop looking to the past for the solutions for the future. When these ideas, a lot of the political ideas and economic ideas that came about were based on the challenges of the time. We're still so focused. I mean, when I hear people talking about the merits of socialism or whatever have you, I personally find it hysterical. Like, it's just it's all a bit crazy.
Well, I mean, call it by anything you want, whether it's socialism. I mean, socialism's got a bad tag, which it doesn't really deserve. But there are so many different kinds of socialism. I mean, it's yes. Pretty much unclear what exactly somebody is referring to when they say I'm a socialist. But
yes, that's exactly true. And a lot of people also don't really understand its correlation with communism. Everyone has a different idea about what it actually means. I think that society, I think it's fair to say that we are all on a journey together. I think most of us share our concern for the world and its health and the well-being of society and humanity, and we care for each other. I'd like to think that a lot of us, you know, the majority of us around the world have these common interests. But it's about finding the middle ground between all these other issues that affect us.
I'd love to have a debate with you about the what you would consider to be the merits of a sort of free market, and I could, you know, make a few observations about I mean you know how it is, because I'd like to disagree with you, but at the same time I want to, you know, hear you out, as in, and I want people to be able to hear your words, as in, I'm not going to jump in and stop you from talking, because that's bullshit, but as in have a proper discussion about these things. But yeah, maybe next time if you want, because I'd love to hear that.
We can do that. Sure, we'll have a nice, interesting, let's call it a discussion.
Absolutely. All right. The gauntlet has been laid down. We shall see what comes up. But it's cool that we've sort of entered the political debate, having moved on from the water topic that we were discussing earlier. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot more to discuss with regards to that. Actually, no, let's finish the topic with water, and then we'll jump into the politics. All right. So you've got lots of conferences coming up. So the UN one, as you said, is the end of June, and then there in October is which region?
Canada.
Canada, and then November Singapore, you said.
Yes, and then Portugal for the Global Summit next February, March.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Wonderful. And what do you have to do for these events? What's your goal for these summits?
So my role is to ensure that that it's successful financially, and make sure we have enough sort of sponsors supporting the event, but also helping these organizations, you know, get full advantage out of being part of this event. As you mentioned earlier, that, you know, there's this huge engagement at our summit. We get a lot of high-level attendees participating. So one of the key things that takes place at these summits are the sort of behind-the-scenes discussions. So there's a lot of sort of side sessions that might take place, which addresses some key concerns for some of our clients, but also, you know, allows them to have high-level discussions with certain individuals and organizations. It's sort of, the event itself is very well known because of the fact that there are a lot of partnerships that have developed off the back of the event, relationships that have been created, initiatives that have been launched, major announcements, you know, taking place at the summit. So it's very much, it's used by a lot of different organizations for different reasons, but all to do with sort of helping bring a lot of these stakeholders together, people that may not have known each other previously, and allowing for new ideas, new solutions, and collaborations.
I mean, I follow as many as possible organizations, NGOs, which are really involved in trying to come up with initiatives of a sustainable nature, with innovative design and intention. And I think it's fantastic that there is such a broad spectrum of organizations that come together. Perhaps it's because of the initiatives such as the summit that you're talking about. But I mean, they find expression in many different areas, and it's not necessarily specific to the World Ocean Initiative, but also introducing, you know, equality within sustainability, or giving voices to different areas or different elements of society, you know, because these will naturally produce different kinds of innovations that hadn't necessarily been considered. I don't know if that's a bit abstract or not, but for example, you know, women in sustainability, you know, or people from different cultures and involved in, you know, sustainability, you know, because we don't all use water the same way, and there are some cultures which have used water for thousands of years in a completely different way, which for us now would be, oh well, that's really innovative.
No, we are very, I mean, the Economist broadly is very inclusive. We do not ever host, or we aim to never host all male panels. We always have voices from different parts of the world participating on our panels, in our discussions, especially on a topic like ocean sustainability, the impact that the ocean has on small island states versus much larger states, overfishing in certain regions by much larger countries. There's a host of challenges, and you cannot come up with anything sustainable without all voices being heard. And the issue of women is also very important. For a long time, you wouldn't really see a lot of women participating, and that is changing. I think that it's fair to say that we make sure that there is proper representation from across community, whether it's on the ground, activists to ministerial heads of state level.
Mm. Yeah, this is what I wanted to highlight, is basically because it's great to see, great to read. I try to follow as much as I can, because we've got a lot of catching up to do. So it's wonderful that these summits create more possibilities for other voices to be heard. So my compliments to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. But moving on to a hazy political topic where it has been, how should I say, maneuvered in some ways by a female politician. So Pritti Patel, the Home Secretary, and Rwanda, an unlikely partnership in many ways. I've been asked about this by students in Berlin. What's the gig, Tatiana?
Haven't you heard? We're sending people to Rwanda to help address human trafficking.
Ah, wonderful. So we're trafficking people ourselves.
No, we're legitimately finding a sustainable solution to migration, of course, and we're gonna address the issue of human traffickers. The whole thing is just ridiculous. I mean, I wish somebody had built a better narrative around that than just saying that, because it really doesn't hold true. And it's very, I don't know, it just eerily, I don't know about you, but it just reminds me of when the Germans wanted to send people to Madagascar. I'm like, how is this any different?
I mean, I guess there are a number of different historical events that took place where people sent a certain category of individual from one country to another, and they rarely ended positively, at least in the short and middle term or medium term.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to ask yourself. I mean, again, I don't know. Maybe there's been a discussion with the Rwandan government, and they're saying, yes, we want to expand, our population by X amount and so on. Fair enough. But it's a very, very strange policy. It's very, I think, it's a backward policy, frankly.
I mean, hot on the heels of the Windrush scandal, to kind of then introduce this type of policy. I mean, we're talking Rwanda, which has not been without its own problems in recent years either. So
they've jailed. I mean, they have some, questionable. They've made questionable decisions. I mean, they've got a man held. They illegally diverted a plane, and they've held someone in Rwanda illegally, technically, for however long. So questionable.
Yeah. So because my students, when they asked me, I tried to give them a completely neutral perspective, but I found it extremely difficult in any way to defend the policy. I mean, is there any sense that you can say, okay, maybe this, or is it just absolute rubbish?
No, I mean, look, again, the argument is that we're addressing the human traffickers, and it's not the we want to sort of break the crime ring. Frankly speaking, you're not going to do that by. There's a huge issue with human trafficking, and it's a much broader issue than that. I remember years ago, there was a thing that, there was something that Interpol was doing, which was trying to raise awareness about the links between human trafficking, wildlife poaching, and how these, and I think it was also drug trafficking, I can't remember, but how these things are all intrinsically linked. People will always find ways to take advantage of people in need, and I don't really, I agree with you. I don't get the policy. I don't understand how anyone thought that this was a brilliant idea to introduce and promote. In a government that's already heavily challenged and really trying to, it's underperforming so abysmally, and you're just wondering who thought this was a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, we still have zero actual guidance on the Northern Ireland situation with regards to Brexit. This was just another one of those sort of wishy-washy, we'll get it done. No, you won't, is the answer. And I think the people of Northern Ireland are still sort of, very much in the dark. I guess in some ways feel a bit betrayed. At least some portions, with regards to what the British government promised them. So there are concerns about how that will happen. As to relying in any way on some of these policies, purely on the basis that the Tories have a reputation for getting things done. Well, if they ever did, I'm not sure, but not for a long time.
This is controversial, but I actually think Cameron's government was actually all right.
He created this crap in the first place with the referendum.
Yes, okay, fine, but hindsight is a wonderful thing. Scotland didn't go independent, so I think they thought, oh, let's try this one out for size as well. Surprise. Yeah. Anyway, listen, you can't, you make mistakes. We are not infallible, and some people just don't. Like with this policy, you don't test, or what is it? You don't get you don't test the room temperature before putting something out. But anyway, yeah. So no, I think
is that actually a saying?
Yeah, check the room temperature. Yeah, you should, right? Or what is it? What was it? When my sister makes inappropriate jokes, I'm always looking at her. I'm like, know your audience. Know your audience. But anyway, I disagree with that, but I do think that this government they're lost, and I don't know. 2024 feels like a long time away, and I just see a lot of just more gaffes and mishaps and scandals just popping up over the next 2 years, if it gets to another 2 years. Otherwise, we'll be in a general election.
Yeah. No, I wasn't at all trying to sort of re-argue Brexit, because that's definitely been decided. But
done and dusted.
Yeah, of course it's gone. But the issue is the organization of it, and that remains. Yeah, it's absolutely chaotic. And
Brexit for opportunity. Brexit, what is it? Brexit for opportunities or future opportunity? Anyway, whatever.
I have no idea.
I will say one thing.
Please.
As a former Bremainer, because I have now come to terms with the reality. It's called maturing. I recently was in Paris, and I had completely forgotten about the benefits of Brexit, which is shopping and tax back. So I pay, and then I get a portion of my tax back. So hey, it's not all bad.
Okay. Yeah, but then you have to pay import duties if you buy something in another country outside of the UK.
No, you don't. If you're buying something, it's pretty standard. You can do tax back when you go shopping in the US. It's only if you were shipping it in that would be an issue.
Okay.
But you're allowed to tax back. So yeah.
All right. All right.
Positive.
But at least you found one thing that you can probably point the finger at. I don't know if that actually counts, but we'll just say it does because you said it. All right. So basically, you have no idea about this policy of sending people to Rwanda.
Yeah. I mean, it's it seems ridiculous. I think most people agree that it's ridiculous. I think that there's a court challenge going on about it right now. So yeah, I mean, the arguments for it are very weak. So my opinion on it is that it's just ridiculous.
Well, luckily the British Supreme Court has
it doesn't reflect
common
the
sense.
global Britain ambition that we have.
No, okay. But I was just going to say that lucky the British Supreme Court has more common sense than the American Supreme Court, at least at the moment. But we're not going to talk about that. But Pritti Patel, how is she still in a job? Because she has to be, I don't know, just a walking. How can I say? She's just controversy, isn't she? Personified.
No,
I mean,
Boris Johnson is controversy.
no, he's just ridiculous. He's an absolute plant. Yeah,
she's one of the sidekicks, you know, like the entourage of the UK, that TV show. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know. We've had better. You know, it makes Theresa May look like an angel, frankly speaking.
Yeah, and she was horrible in
Well,
the
no,
Home
yeah,
Office.
I think that Theresa May gets a lot of flack for doing a lot of things, and I actually think she was decent. I still think she was a good prime minister. I liked her.
Because we can, yeah, okay. She will
Brexit
never
is
live
Brexit.
down. She will never live down Dancing Queen. Yeah, that is.
Or running in the field.
That was just absolutely pathetic.
Running in the field.
I don't know what that was about. But I mean, wasn't Pritti Patel? Didn't she was? I think fired. She was fired from a previous position, wasn't she? Because she went to sort of on her holiday secretly negotiate with other countries' officials, wasn't she?
Yeah. And
so
actually, that was during May's time, and May took decisive action. She's been accused of bullying, and not much has happened since then. But it's not just her; it's a collection in the current government. So I think it's easier to demonize Patel because it feeds into our gender bias view of women. It's like years ago I had this discussion as I was saying, oh, look at some of the biggest corporate bankruptcies were because women were in charge. And then I remember a couple of, I had this huge debate with them about it. And then years ago I had this, about a year ago, or was it a couple of months ago, I read this article about how companies tend to bring in women when they're on the brink of a disaster, because it's easier to scapegoat them. And then think Theresa May and Brexit, it was a walking time bomb, and it was always going to be challenging. It's easy to blame her for things not moving like the way they should have, but frankly speaking, I think she did as much as she could with what she had at the time.
Yeah, I'm not blaming Theresa May at all because she was dealt a bad hand from the start. She wasn't a Brexiteer either, and so she, I think, was just the wrong person at the wrong time in as much as that is concerned. But the gender bias argument against Pritti Patel, that doesn't work for me because I think she is demonic, and that's got nothing to do with her gender whatsoever. I'm very supportive of all non-male and non-binary genders in politics, but Pritti Patel, she crosses so many different lines for so many different reasons. For me, I think she's just cruel.
Well, look, I don't personally know her, so I can't say that she is or she isn't. I'm sure she's nice to her family.
I hope so.
But my thing is that yes, I can understand that, but I think there are many bad actors at the moment with the poor judgment all around. But it's interesting how much the media plays up to the whole Patel thing versus others on the team as well. So that's my only comment on that. But yes, I mean, I think with any sense they would have sort of probably done a reshuffle and moved people around by now.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I mean, she must be extremely intelligent and capable. The fact that she keeps sort of coming back and being put into these positions of such seniority. But I think she needs to work on her PR, if nothing else.
She needs to get a good PR person. Yes, she does.
Absolutely. But anyway, okay, all right, let's move away from this because as it is, I know I don't have you for too long. And there's so many topics that I'd like to talk about, but we're not going to get to them. But you were going to tell me about this Armenian film review in Guardian, or maybe even the Armenian film. I've not seen or read either. What's all this about?
Yes, so the Armenian Institute, the charity of which I'm a trustee, is hosting a film festival this month. It's titled Spaces and Places, and it's exploring Armenian identities in film. We are partnered with Klasiki, who regularly host different film screenings and are very much focused on Soviet, post-Soviet films and films from the Caucasus. So we are partnered with Kasiki on this during this film festival, and we hosted our first screening last Tuesday at Ciné Lumière at the Institut de Français, and it was reviewed by Peter Bradshaw at The Guardian. The film itself is called We Are Mountains. We Are Our Mountains, and it's a 1969. I will double check this, but it's a 1969 film based on 1969. I'm right. We and Our Mountains. It's all about. It's sort of a satirical take on the Soviet Union. It was directed by Henrik Malayan, and it features some well-known at the time Armenian actors. The scene starts off with, the film starts with sort of snapshots of what's going on around the world in the late 60s, Beatles mania and football and, all these sort of fun things that are happening around the world. And then you get moved to this sort of countryside shot where everything's just very quiet. And you're introduced to these shepherds and land workers. And then the story starts with, these men accidentally kill this other man's sheep and have him for dinner. And when the shepherd says, "Where is my sheep?" he says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know." They pay him and off he goes. But then a Soviet officer gets involved because he's informed of this theft, and he comes to the little village to investigate and becomes quickly frustrated with the local people. So anyway, it's a beautiful film. It is considered one of, I think, the best films made. However, I would argue that Parajanov's Color of Pomegranates, which we've screened as well in the past, is a much better film, just in terms of story and so on.
Okay, but I mean that's very artistic. The Color of Pomegranates, from what I recall of it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful. I mean, Parajanov is a master. So last year we did another. Obviously, we were during COVID, so it was all online. And then, in fact, Spaces and Places, there are, you can access some of the films online if you're not around and you can't actually get to Ciné Lumière. Some of them will be hosted at AI's offices. There'll be another screening of some of our other films. And last year we did one called Under Soviet Skies. And again, we featured various different films from not just Armenian directors and writers, but other film directors as well from around the Soviet Union. Well, former Soviet Union.
Okay, I mean, I think I've seen this one though, Menking Mersarera. Yes. It's a black and white movie. Is one of the stars Sos Sarkisyan by any chance?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I have seen it. That was quite interesting because that was the first ever sort of proper Armenian movie I saw. I was only 13 at the time, so I couldn't necessarily understand all of this, the fine political and social undercurrents that were ongoing. But it was definitely quite well made, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant film. I mean, it's truly brilliant. I highly recommend it. There's subtitles. You do not need to speak Armenian to to watch it. There are actually some beautiful films that were made during that era. You know, last year we featured A Piece of Sky, Burnt by the Sun, the Forgotten, the Forgotten Shadow of Forgotten Ancestors, which is another Parajama film, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film. Again, very colorful, very artistic in approach. And it is about the Ukrainian, and it sort of focuses on the Ukrainian Hutzul people. So beautiful film. If you haven't seen it, I call it the Soviet answer to Wuthering Heights, because it's about it's a love story.
Okay, interesting. That's high praise indeed. Okay, all right. And what about the Guardian review then? What's the review like?
It's 4 out of 5, so it was a very positive review, and so henceforth you should all go and watch it.
Absolutely. Okay.
We made a joke that it should have been a 5 out of 5, but I guess, you know,
nothing's perfect, right?
Nothing's perfect.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That's an extremely positive note upon which to say adieu, because some of our previous topics were not necessarily so positive, but also we've managed to find a topic that we agreed upon in some way, which is quite funny, isn't it, Tatiana? Today,
you see the arts bring people together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was wondering what they were for. Good. Okay. All right. It's always a pleasure, Tatiana. I've now got like notes here for stuff that we're going to talk about next time. So we're going to have this debate about the market, and your liberal sense and my socialist awareness, to define them in some way.
Look, we'll come to the conclusion that I'm right and you're wrong, okay? And we'll go about our lives, and you'll be a happier person knowing that.
I'm going to leave this in, and I'll let other people make their minds up on that. But we'll have our debate. And then we'll let the we'll just let the what'd you say? We'll just let things fall as they do. The runes. I'll edit this shit out. We'll let the runes fall as they will, and then we'll see what happens. Yeah.
All right. That sounds. Yeah. We'll do that.
Yeah. Good. All right, Tatiana, thank you very much for your time, and I truly wish you all the best, especially with the World Ocean Initiative. It sounds extremely important, and kick some petrochemical ass if you can.
It's always a pleasure, and I hope the rest of the week goes well.
Two and a mic. Two.